Welcome, Dolphin fans, to the Friday edition of Dolphins In Depth, the podcast provided to you by the Miami Herald. I am Omar Kelly. Right now, joining me is Barry Jackson, the infamous Barry Jackson. And Isaiah Smalls will join us soon. He's finishing up some work. And Barry, today is the day we get the final injury report. Is it really the final one? Because I think there's probably going to be one contributing on Sunday. A couple of surprises on the injury report. One, let's get this out of the way. Odell Beckham is on your injury report with a hamstring injury. He did not practice because of the hamstring injury and also some personal reasons. His status is questionable for the game. I don't think his status would have changed. It was probably always going to be questionable just because of the knee. The hamstring is new. But let's move forward because I really don't know what to think about that situation. The more pressing injury-related situation is the Javon Holland practiced all week with his hand injury. I found that quite fascinating, primarily because he's been out there with 3 different types of wraps around his hand. Some days he's catching balls. Some days he's not catching balls. Everything he's doing with one hand. Generally, the Dolphins listed him as doubtful, and that, in your opinion, good thing, bad thing, Barry?
I think it's a safe way to go not to play him. It is odd, though, that he used 3 different hand wrappings this week. Also, today he caught balls with both hands, including the injured left hand, but the team obviously determined that it would put him at risk to play and that it obviously is not ideal to play with a hand cast. So we'll see Marcus May opposite Jordan Poyer, who will play on Sunday, with Elijah Campbell backing them up. And you mentioned the Odell thing. A couple of other things have happened late afternoon today on Friday. They say things happen in threes. There were 3 surprises around the time the injury report came out. We learned about Odell being questionable with the hamstring and for personal reasons. Also, we learned Austin Jackson has a back injury that he sustained in the last 24 hours. Somehow, he wasn't on the injury report yesterday. He was limited today in practice. Unlike Beckham, he was at practice, and he did practice to an extent. So Jackson is questionable for Sunday. If he can't play, Kendall Lamb would probably start at right tackle. And then the third thing that happened, surprisingly, in the last couple hours is Blake Ferguson suddenly has a personal issue as well. He was listed as questionable. So the Dolphins would need a long snapper in the unlikely event that he can't play on Sunday. The good news is that Ashane's back. He's at a concussion protocol. And we mentioned Poyer is back. But I'm concerned, Omar, about Ogbah, questionable with the bicep. We both talked to him this week. He told me he's feeling okay, but non-committal about playing Sunday. McDaniel was also. And then David Long, questionable with the knee issue that's come up. How concerned are you about both of those?
I think David Long and that knee is going to be an issue that's here all season. He remember he had his knee scoped before the season began. That's never a good indication. Half the time it's been a hamstring injury. Hamstring, for those who didn't attend a medical school but stayed a Holiday Inn, when you've got knee issues, your hamstrings, your quads start to compensate for the knee, and then something goes wrong with them. It's just a snowball effect. So David Long, I think we're probably going to be looking at him having a limited participation pretty much all season. And then we've got the Ogbah situation. When you talk to Ogbah, he's like, yeah, I don't know. When I talk to Ogbah, he's like, yeah, of course I'm playing. Mike McDaniel sounded a little bit pessimistic about it. And I asked Ogbah, and he was like, Mike sounds pessimistic about you playing. And he was just like, I'm planning to play. I have been in this situation a couple of times where Mike has been pessimistic, the player has been optimistic, and then ends up the player doesn't play. We've seen that a couple of times with Xavier Howard. I don't know what to think. What I do know is a Dolphins defensive line, minus Emmanuel Ogbah, already without Jaelan Phillips, having to rely significant snaps on Tyus Bowser, who's on week 2, and Chop Robinson, who is a developing first-round pick. Cause for concern, Barry?
Oh, it'd be great concern to me. I mean, edge rusher, which would be a clear strength of this team if they had Chubb and Phillips, it's now one of the least accomplished groups in the league. With Chop Robinson so far this season, has the 8 pressures and the 66 pass rushing snaps, but no sacks yet. Tyus Bowser obviously played his first game for the Dolphins a couple of weeks ago. Mo Kamara told me this week that he's Dolphins coaches have indicated that to him. So I'm not sure how much they can count on Mo Kamara. And then Quentin Bell. I always say that you judge what coaches think of you in part by snap counts. And they played Quentin Bell one snap against New England and played 30-plus snaps for Tyus Bowser, who had just joined the team within the previous 72 hours. So to me, that was telling. So you don't have a healthy edge player who has a sack this season on the roster. And I want to bring Isaiah Smalls into the conversation. But one thing I was thinking about this week, which I wanted to mention, Omar. I know 3 years, $20 million might have been a little steep for Brandon Jones. But one thing that I thought about when they decided to move on and to sign an older Jordan Poyer was that they were likely going to begin the year without Chubb. And obviously Phillips was going to be coming off the Achilles, and how his athleticism as a blitzer, obviously he's one of the best blitzing safeties in the league, plus his run-stopping ability would be helpful, in addition to the fact that he had become a competent coverage guy as a safety. So to me, that's another reason why it would be so much better to have Brandon Jones here this week, just because you're going to need to generate a pass rush somehow. I'd rather generate it on a blitz than not have it at all. By the way, and we're all fans of Anthony Weaver. We think he's done a good job. They've blitzed defensive backs only 25 times all year. Quite a change from the Josh Boyer era. So I'm not even sure how much you would use Brandon Jones as a blitzer. But to me, you need to generate a pass rush somehow, some way. I don't know how they're going to do it with these edge players. How concerned are you, Isaiah, about this defense heading into Sunday?
Oh, I'm very concerned, especially with Richardson back there at QB, man. Obviously, he's a huge running threat, especially, in the red zone, right? So, I'm very concerned. You guys just listed the unproven quantities at the edge rushing position. It's not pretty at all. And so it's going to be very, very scary if Ogbah, in fact, does not suit up on Sunday. It's going to be scary.
Woo! Quentin Bell was a promising player during training camp. He's clearly fallen off the face of the map. I'm not even sure he's contributing much on special teams. And then we know that we're on a rookie watch with Chop Robinson. It hasn't been good yet, but it hasn't been disastrous. So hopefully he continues to improve. If I remember correctly, Jaelan Phillips didn't get heated up until the second half of the season. So we're close. We got about 3 more games to go, Chop, till you're supposed to be heating up. So it'll be interesting to see how they play this if Ogbah doesn't sit, or maybe Ogbah's on a snap count. But I will say this. Deshaun Hand has been one of the players who is trending upwards in terms of he's getting better, getting more snaps, getting more involved. And I think that could potentially allow you to put Calais Campbell on the edges. Now, it's not the greatest solution, especially on the early downs where it's a run-specific down. If I'm playing Calais on the run-specific downs and playing Chop on the pass-specific downs, I'll be okay. But the problem is who plays next to Zach Sealer. If you had some defensive tackles, maybe this could be a great game for an elevation of wasn't there one of these guys, Jonathan Harris? Yeah, wasn't he
former Denver player? Last time he was on a field in a regular season game here, the Broncos were giving him 70 points. He was part of that defense, obviously not all his fault. Right, so he'd be an option for elevation. He'd be the natural guy to bring up. Remember, Duke Riley started the game a couple of weeks ago at outside linebacker. It was the only snap he played there all day. Now he can play outside linebacker.
No, he cannot. No, he cannot. Stop lying on Duke.
He's a capable pass rusher, so you could.
I have more confidence in Jordan Brooks playing outside linebacker than Duke. Duke Riley cannot set an edge.
Their depth at inside linebacker should give them extra bodies, right? Obviously Anthony Walker, Duke Riley, Jordan Brooks, David Long, they're all better suited inside linebacker. We know it won't be Channing Tindall because the team has already said he's simply not big enough to play on the edge. So this group of
bigger than Duke Riley. What's going on here?
He did play the one snap at outside backer to open the game. Then we never saw him again 2 weeks ago. But to me, outside linebacker, outside of quarterback guys, outside linebacker is the most depressing development of this Dolphin season, to be left now in a position where Shaq Barrett, who they thought they're number 3, retires 4 days before camp. We know from Drew Rosenhaus, from what he said, that the Dolphins had the opportunity to match the Van Ginkel offer. Van Ginkel's been tremendous this year. I know you said he's not a great scheme fit. I would much rather have him than not have him. So they passed on that. If they had to do it again, they would keep him, as Rosenhaus said. And then obviously to lose Phillips for the year when he was taken out by friendly fire, by Jordan Poyer's helmet, right? And then not to have Chubb back, and he's not even practicing yet. And they're left with a collection of players that probably you would say they're now bottom 6 or 7 in the league in terms of edge players. And without a pass rush, how do you win in this league? That has me, hate to be pessimistic again, but that has me down on the team's chances, unless Chubb can make a miraculous recovery and be back helping by early November.
I can answer that question for you, Barry. It's the same way they overcame it in 2021 when they had Jerome Baker blitzing from the edges. You can have a Jordan Brooks help you in that role, facilitate. Now, Tyus Bowser, the one thing I did find very interesting this week is Calais Campbell, a 17-year NFL veteran, a guy who's well-established in Anthony Weaver's defense, said Tyus Bowser knows the defense better than anybody else on the team, and he's only been here 2 weeks. So that's one thing that makes me think that, hey, this guy's going to step in and he's going to contribute. But there's a reason why he was on Seattle's practice squad and not on their 53-man roster, or Seattle didn't elevate him. Okay, what is that reason? I have absolutely no idea.
I think it's the injuries, though. I think he's still, working his way back. I dug into his history a little bit. And
what was the injury that
there was a knee injury, and I believe an Achilles injury that he's had. But remember, 2021, he led that Baltimore defense in sacks, right? So
he got 7 that year. Absolutely, Isaiah. I talked to Tyus this week. He said that he and Weaver have kept in touch these last few months. And when he was healthy, he was a very competent edge player. Exactly. The question is, can he regain what he showed in 2001 when he played in Baltimore? He said he was just getting comfortable on Seattle's practice squad when the Dolphins called, but he's happy to be reunited with Weaver. To me, we're going to see heavy Chop Robinson, heavy Tyus Bowser. I don't know how much Quentin Bell we're going to see. I think it's just going to be to give the other guys rest, or if Ogbah's on a snap count on Sunday. So your hopes now are basically with a rookie, Chop Robinson, who had 2 sacks against Power 5 teams last year, and with a player, Tyus Bowser, who wasn't even medically cleared to join a team this summer and had been on a practice squad. That, to me, is what I find depressing about the Dolphins' outlook. I just don't know how they're going to rush the quarterback, Omar and Isaiah.
Hey, they get pressure with Calais, and they get pressure with Zach Sealer. Hand has got a sack. Maybe they'll get creative. We'll see. They can also blitz from the exterior. They can blitz with Poyer. So they can do multiple things. It'll be interesting to see how they overcome that issue. Now let's talk about week number 3 of Tyler Snoop Huntley becoming the starting quarterback. Isaiah, you've been our Snoop Huntley coverage expert. How much more of this offense do you expect him to know now that he's had an entire bye week to get basically an OTA install, foundations, concepts, principles, motions? They just hammered him with tutorial stuff that he never got the opportunity to learn when he had to jump in and immediately start to become the starter. How much more mastery of this offense do you expect in week 3?
Oh, night and day difference from week 1 of the Huntley experiment. Like, I think, you take that bye week, right? Officially, he's been here a month as of yesterday, right? He joined the team September 17th. So I think, obviously not a full mastery of the nuances, subtle nuances, but I think he'll know the playbook well enough to really just open it up, right? I think a couple weeks ago, he did a good job of just, making the correct throws. He had that 1 interception, but that was a great play by, Christian Gonzalez. I think, hopefully they'll be able to marry some of the QB design runs that we saw a heavy dose of during the week 1 of the Huntley experiment, and that totally went away against the Patriots, right? Like, there was 0 design.
They said that was by design. Actually, Frank Smith basically said we looked at what the approach would have been, best way to utilize our personnel. And obviously, they took the running quarterback out of the equation. That doesn't make any sense to me. But hey, I'm not Frank Smith. I'm not running an offense, and nobody wants to hire me as an offensive coordinator. I don't want to overestimate the scrambling ability of Huntley, because even when you go back to his college film, it's not dynamic. It's like, okay, we've got a scrambling quarterback. And let's be real about this. How many more quarterbacks do we want to go through when we're scrambling and expose them to risk? I'm kind of on my quota now that we're on our fourth quarterback. This is a situation where my thing is he's got to create a better chemistry and a better flow with Waddle and with Tyreek, and be able to hit Tyreek on the deep patterns when he's open, be able to hit Tyreek on the slants when he's open. And I just don't see it. And I hate to say this because this is the massive, major stereotype that goes with African-American quarterbacks. But I really feel like the processing speed is the reason why he wasn't drafted in that class. And the processing speed is the reason why he was on Baltimore's practice squad. Is he a fast enough processor to execute this offense?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that left me encouraged. I like that the coaching staff, and Frank Smith told us this last week, they have made a conscious decision to try to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers more, which for whatever reason, they abandoned that theory immediately after Tua's injury, partly because the quarterback play was so substandard by Skylar Thompson because Huntley didn't play well on short knowledge, right, against Tennessee. But Jonnu Smith had his best game against New England, and Frank Smith said, we need to get the ball in our playmakers' hands. I think Tyler Huntley is at least capable of that, right? If he can get the ball, Waddle, Hill, Jonnu Smith in their hands sometime somewhere between, I don't know, it's 15 and 22 times, right? At least that gives them a chance to move the ball. Also, keep in mind, Colts 26th against the pass, Colts 31st against the run. This is not a very good defense. They have some decent pieces with Kwity Paye, with Kenny Moore, the slot corner who's played well over time. But this is not a very good Colts defense. If there's a defense that Huntley should be able to take advantage of, it should be this one, no?
No, I agree. And I think one of the big keys that made the passing offense so successful, a couple of weeks ago was the running game, right? You just mentioned 31st against the run. Like, if they don't pound the ball this game, like Teron Armstead said it today, like the running game has to be a staple of this offense going forward because it opens up opportunities for the Tyreek Hills, for the Jalen Waddles, for the Jonnu Smiths, right? And so, obviously this team has been seeing a lot of too high safeties throughout the year, right? If you can bring one of those guys into the box, right, then it's like open season for those guys, Hill, Waddle, and Smith.
And it's, it's time for a signature Tyreek Hill game. The guy is too talented for there not to be an eruption. And I know it's far more likely when Tua's back. But, the player voted tops in the league by his peers this year. Doesn't there have to be a signature watershed moment type game at some point before we get to November? No?
Well, the ball has to be thrown more than 17 yards downfield, which is the equivalent of an explosive play. And then Tyreek will have to catch it and then create some separation. When have you seen him catch the ball 17 yards down the field with Tyler Huntley or Skylar Thompson? It just doesn't happen. It hasn't happened. That doesn't mean that it can't, but I'm not of the opinion that this Dolphins offense is going to all of a sudden just wake up and get out of their comatose state. I think it's going to have to be on the run game. I think it's going to have to be Raheem Mostert. I think it's going to have to be Devon Achane. I think it's going to have to be Jalen Wright. And I think it's going to have to be on this offensive line. I'm curious this week on everybody's take about Mike McDaniel, Frank Smith, Butch Barry, their confidence level on the improvements that they've seen on the offensive line. Are you buying in that this offensive line is improving?
Well, I can tell you this. Teron Armstead's playing at a really high level. All the metric sites indicate that. Hasn't given up a sack. Very good as far as blocking for the running game. Brewer has been as advertised as a run blocker. I talked to him this week about his pass blocking. He really made an effort to improve it, and he has. His numbers have graded out very well from a pass metrics standpoint. Liam and Rob Jones have been average to slightly below average, if you believe the metric sites, plus the eye test. Liam had been pretty solid and competent until the New England game when he really struggled. Rob Jones has been adequate. To me, Austin Jackson has been a bit of a disappointment. I know we all like Austin. He's a great guy. He's given up a couple of sacks. He's given up a dozen pressures this year. He hasn't graded out particularly well. Now he has the back injury that came up late this week. So I think for this line to be above average with the decisions they made to move on from Rob Hunt, and obviously Connor Williams had the knee injury at the time they made the move to Brewer. For this line to be a little above average, they need a dominant Austin Jackson, or at least the Austin Jackson who appeared in the first 12 games last year before he got this contract extension. Mostert will help them look good, right? Because Raheem is such an underrated back and so skilled at what he does that he's naturally going to help them. Trade deadline's obviously a couple weeks away. Do you guys think the guard has to be addressed, or do you think they can get by all year with Rob Jones and Liam, even if Isaiah Wynn doesn't come back at left guard?
Isaiah?
Yeah, so honestly, on the offensive line, look, I think by what they said specifically, like the improvements, if you look at the advanced metrics that Barry's talking about, they did have an okay game, specifically running the ball. Like the offensive line, they scored pretty well, right? So what they said is right. Like, yes, they have been improved. I think the Colts will be another chance to improve as well. Will this line be successful without Isaiah Wynn? I don't necessarily think so, honestly, because they haven't towards the end of the season. That's when they're going to play the teams that actually have a good pass rush, right? Like they still haven't seen the Browns, still haven't seen the 49ers. Like these are teams that have great pass rushes, right? And so I think right now, like it's okay when you're playing the Patriots, the Colts, and then the Cardinals, the week after, right? But once you start getting into some real games where you have real guys that are going to,
every week is a real game in the NFL.
You're right. I'm talking about teams that have playoff aspirations, right? The Colts aren't really looking to make the playoffs this year, right?
How do you know? They're 3-3. This a victory over Miami could be the catalyst for their entire season. Anthony Richardson can come out and his first return back, he can ball out. He can throw another 70-yard pass. He can scramble and run for another 70 yards. We don't know. This is the NFL.
So every game
Joe Flacco was one of the hottest quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah, I got to tell you something, guys. At the beginning of the week, I was thinking the Colts are doing them a favor by starting Richardson over Flacco. I still feel that way, but I got to tell you, a little worried about the big plays. We've seen them give up big plays all year long. We heard Anthony Weaver this week saying, well, if we removed all the running big plays that we gave up, the biggest one in each game, our run defense would be top 5 in the league instead of bottom half, allowing 4.7 per carry. So the fact that Richardson, obviously, despite the 6 interceptions, despite the unevenness of his game as a passer in year 2, as an unpolished quarterback, he brings, as Isaiah said, the running element that should scare this team without their edge setters, right? And with David Long, who traditionally is their best run defender, dealing with a knee injury. So to me, I'd be very concerned about the big playability of Anthony Richardson. And we know how strong his arm is. If he has accuracy on a deep throw or two, it's very easy to envision the Colts getting 2 or 3 big plays for touchdowns. And is the Dolphins offense even potent enough to overcome that? So that has me concerned and leaning toward Indy on Sunday.
I will just say this one thing. Every game this year where Anthony Richardson has thrown more than 5 passes, he's also thrown a pick, right? And so that's going to be key for this defense, right? They have to force at least 2 turnovers, right? To be able to give this offense that isn't, without its,
they have 4 turnovers on the season. How are you going to expect them to force 2 turnovers in one game?
Because
I guess Ramsey, huh?
Every single time this season, he's thrown more than 5 passes. He's thrown a pick. They have a chance to create turnovers this game. Let's not be come on now. Like this is the game they have to.
Well, here's the important part of the conversation, and this is what the team is trying to avoid talking about. We all know this is the final game, or should be the final game that the Dolphins are playing without Tua Tagovailoa. The goal is to get back to 3-3, get back to 500, positioning yourself to be at a good spot to rebound when Tua comes back. Are we expecting this offense to instantly snap their finger and have dynamic productivity? And if so, why not?
It's going to be difficult because obviously the problems that existed before Tua was injured still exists. You don't have a healthy, reliable third receiver with Odell now battling a hamstring. Now maybe he's back and fine next week, but he's still got to establish some sort of chemistry with Beckham. Odell has said he has thrown with Tua, but we don't know how often. We don't know if those are just casual throws in a backyard somewhere or if he's actually making hard cuts and running routes. So that's a concern. And obviously it's the same offensive line that Tua, I don't want to say is going to be stuck with, because again, it hasn't been an awful offensive line, but it's been an average offensive line, right? And you're always one hit away with Tehran of being a well below average offensive line. So because they're burdened with the same issues and because Tua's been in mothballs for a month, I would say it's going to take some time. You can't expect a 30-point explosion against Arizona if he plays a week from Sunday. Isaiah, are your expectations for Tua fireworks immediately, or you think that's unreasonable once he comes back?
No, that's very unreasonable. This guy hasn't played since week 2, and in his last performance, he threw 3 interceptions. Like, let's not act like that last game, like the Dolphins really had a chance of winning. Like, they were blown out. That game was over. Go back and look at it. That game was over.
Hey, man, they got Tua doesn't get concussed on that 4th down run. You know,
but I remember Nick Saban talking about that play specifically. The reason why he wanted to run was because Tua's a competitor. He wants to get those few extra yards to be able to be like, all right, guys, let's go. You see me doing it, let you step up too. But what happened when he, was trying to make that big run?
He got his eggs scrambled.
Yeah. Exactly. So I don't think that just him coming back, everything will be roses and daisies. I think they have an opportunity with a team like the Cardinals, who doesn't have the best defense. Like, they have some good wins on their schedule, right? They beat the Niners. But like it's not a particularly wowing, defensive team, right? So I think, they have the potential to, try to figure out some of the kinks, but I also think it will be better because you will have a healthy Raheem Mostert, right? Like that Bills game, 40, not 40, 20 something plus carries for Devon Achane in that game. Like, being able
to 29 times all told between running and passing in that Buffalo game. Yeah, exactly. I guess here's one question: can they survive falling to 2-4 and Tua rescuing them? Is the schedule in November easy enough? At Buffalo, they're very likely to lose that game. But they do have the Raiders. They do have New England. Obviously, they have Arizona. The Cleveland game in late December doesn't look difficult. Jets aren't as good as what people thought they would be, so maybe you split those games. I don't know that they could recover from 2-4. Omar, I have a feeling you think they can, because you think their schedule's maybe a little easier than what I think.
Yeah, after Buffalo, it gets quite light, in my opinion. I'm not scared of the Cardinals. The Rams aren't scary. The Raiders aren't scary. You got New England. Okay, Green Bay. That's going to be a little bit traumatic. You're playing in Houston. That could be a little bit traumatic. But then, you're facing the 49ers at home, and then you've got the Browns and the Jets. Okay,
both away games in very cold environments.
All right, so you're calling them softies. Okay, no problem.
I didn't say that. That word did not come out of my mouth. I just said in the past, the Dolphins have struggled to play in the cold. Is that true?
Yes, scored enough in the snow game in Buffalo, but ultimately couldn't pull that out, and obviously couldn't do anything in the Kansas City Arctic conditions. But yes, fair. I would just say this: if you fall to 2-4, it's easy to come up with 8 losses, right? If you're thinking, I know Rams is a winnable game, but you're probably going to lose one of the Jets games. You're probably going to lose at Houston. You're probably going to lose at Buffalo. That's 7 losses right there, right? And then if you lose at home to San Francisco, that's 8 losses, and that gives you no margin for error if you're thinking of finishing 9-8, right? You have to win every other game if you lose those 4 games. So that's why Sunday is vital. If they can just prevent the big play, and if they get enough from Huntley and Waddle and Hill and Mostert, their signature players, a little Jonnu Smith, then the season will become very interesting again, with Tua likely coming back. But if it's 2-4, I would say their chances of recovering from that are probably less than 30%.
The eyes of the NFL will be watching the Miami Dolphins in a week. I think this is a great opportunity to put yourself in your best position. I think they've had a bye. Your body is rested. You're getting back some injured players. Yes, you've lost a guy like Javon Holland, but you're getting back some injured players, and everybody's body's rested. Hell, Tehran, I think, practiced all week this week. That might be the first time in Dolphins history. So I like the fact that, one, Indianapolis is not an intimidating venue to play in. Especially if you could score early, you can get the crowd out of it. And I do believe that offensively, they're going to become more consistent and reliable in the run game, and that's going to set the table for everything else. So let's get into some of these predictions. I'll start it out. I definitely think the Dolphins walk away with a victory. I think this is a 21-17 win that sets the table for the return of Tua. This Dolphins team needs to become more reliant on the run game, and I really do think Raheem Mostert will have a big game.
I would say 21-13 Colts. I just don't have confidence that they're going to get any sort of pass rush on Richardson. I feel like he's probably going to break out for a big run. They're probably going to have a couple of big plays. I just don't think the offense is potent enough to overcome it. Hoping they get to 3-3 to make this season interesting, but I'm dubious. Isaiah?
I'm going to go 20-16 Dolphins. I think that they'll be able to pull it out. The edge rushing, the absence of potential absence of Ogbah is a little bit concerning. But I think he plays. So I think he's going to play. I think he understands the reality of the situation, and 2-4 is not a good that's not a good football team. Omar, you told me to look up some Bill Parcells quotes, and there was one that really stuck with me. You are who your record says you are, right? So if this is a good football team, they will be 3-3 come next week.
Yeah. Now, I don't even think that's a good football team. That's just an average football team. We're trying to get to average. So that then we can hand Tua back over an average team. Tattooed sleeve, two-sleeve Tua.
He's got time on his hands.
Yeah.
Now on IR, right? Go to Disney on Ice, get tattoos.
Yeah, he completed the sleeve on his right hand, I believe it is. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like when we get a tattooed, well-rested, non-concussed Tua back in the helm. But on Sunday, 1 p.m., the Miami Dolphins have the Indianapolis Colts on the road. Anthony Richardson's return. Jonathan Taylor is not going to be playing for the Colts. But Miami Dolphins, they do have Raheem Mostert. They do have Devon Achane. They will not have Javon Holland. But they will have Jordan Poyer. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. We will be here, Miami Dolphins in depth, after the game on Monday.